Let's talk about cognitive dissonance. It is a term that has been thrown around a lot, and I feel like a lot of people do not really understand what it is because it is widely misused. So I wanted to shed some light on what cognitive dissonance actually is. And I find some experiments that were performed on some volunteers, some people, really interesting because it just shows us how complicated our brains are and how interesting our minds work. So without further ado, let's talk some more about it. First of all, basically cognitive dissonance is having two thoughts or beliefs that are inconsistent with each other. For example, let's say that you have a really important exam tomorrow, but you're not studying and you're not really going to. And this creates a cognitive dissonance in your head because you should be studying and you know that you should, but you are not doing it. So you will feel uncomfortable. Another example is smoking. Everybody knows that smoking is bad for you and that it causes cancer and many other problems, but a lot of people do smoke and they know that smoking is bad, but they still do it, and it causes cognitive dissonance in them. Usually a lot of cognitive dissonance appears when we have to make a decision. For example, we need to move to another place and we have to decide if we want to stay closer to our friends and family, or for example have a higher salary. So there are several reasons for the cognitive dissonance to appear, and one of them is logical contradiction. So it's just not making any sense to you in this moment. There is cultural contradiction, so something that you have been taught your entire life to be true in your culture, you find out that it's not true, or you have to do something that doesn't correspond to your beliefs. When your opinion is really different from the majority, this is why usually we try to stay with the crowd and go with the flow. And when your current situation contradicts the situation that you have faced in the past. We as humans are really uncomfortable with inconsistency. So we want our thoughts and the things that happen around us to be consistent with each other, and this is why we find ways to resolve cognitive dissonance. First of all, it really doesn't fit our understanding of the world, so we want to understand what is happening around us, and when something happens that doesn't add up, it kind of just throws us out of our place. Then again, we have real physical distress that can be measured when we face a cognitive dissonance. And another very interesting thing is that the more effort we spend to achieve something, the more we value it. So this is why, for example, cheating on a test doesn't feel as good as earning the good grade by studying. I think that cognitive dissonance doesn't take place only in decision making, but also in a lot of other areas of life. And I think that a lot of times you can find it in many relationships, especially abusive relationships. And I will get to it a little bit later. So I want to share with you one experiment that I find really interesting. And the experiment was that people were asked to do a really dull task for 1 hour. One group was paid $1 to go to the waiting room and tell the people who sit there that the task is really interesting, and the other group did exactly the same thing, but they got paid $20. And the people who got paid only $1 were really better at explaining how interesting and meaningful the task was, although it was completely stupid and useless. So how do we resolve a cognitive dissonance? First of all, we can change our actions. For example, if you are a smoker and you know that it's bad for you, you can quit smoking and then there is no cognitive dissonance anymore. We can change our beliefs, which is most of the times easier, and we can just say, well, okay, I just will believe something different now and go on with your life. We can ignore all the new information about the topic and just try to pretend like nothing happened, like we don't know anything, we don't get any new information, we just ignore it altogether because it causes us more distress and we don't want to be reminded of it. And the last thing is filtering the information. So you can only, for example, pay attention to the information that agrees with what you believe already, and you don't want to be reminded, or you don't want to know about the situations when your beliefs are wrong. So you will just stick to your point of view and you will ignore everything that contradicts it in any way. So as for relationships, I think that it is pretty often that we convince ourselves in something that is really not true, just in order to kind of keep the status quo or to not have to do anything about your situation. For example, if you are in a really abusive relationship with, for example, an alcoholic or just a person who is physically abusive, you can start telling yourself something like, I deserve this, or they're not really that bad, or when they don't drink they are really, really nice, and all of these things. Also, with a lot of child abuse, for example, children, to avoid the cognitive dissonance, start thinking that the abuse was their fault, or that if they didn't provoke their parents, they wouldn't beat them up or something like that. So there is a lot of it going on in our heads. I don't think that cognitive dissonance is a problem as it is, because everybody faces it and it is just part of our nature as humans. But I think that it's very important to just understand how our brains work and how this can affect our decision making, so that we are more aware of it. And when we make, for example, life-changing decisions, or if we are facing some kind of a dilemma, we can be more aware and we can be more like thoughtful about the consequences of our decisions and the reasons why we shift toward one decision instead of another. So I hope that you found this video interesting and maybe it made you think a little bit about something, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Be nice humans. Goodbye.